Hello, and welcome to the Questionable Album Club. This is the first time we've got a six-member panel, and a big panel for a big personality. Today's album, chosen by Marcus, is by the legendary neoclassical Swedish guitar player Yngwie Malmsteen, released in 2019. His 21st. Can you believe this? This is his 21st studio album. I know it's been going quite a long time, since the sort of early 80s with Steele and all that, but 21st studio album. Released on the King/Mascot label. I think it's Japanese. It's called Blue Lightning, and this was a departure from his usual kind of neo-classical metal bombast. This is his bringing it down a little bit, his blues album, yeah? Just bringing it down a little bit, ease off, a little more sensitivity, a little bit more kind of like, thoughtful, less bombastic, more kind of musical. The blues, right? It's a kind of Marcus, do you want to tell us why you chose this? What's your before I say Yngwie Malmsteen? I mean, if you come from a metal background, you know about Yngwie Malmsteen.
He's a total legend. I vividly remember the first time seeing him in the pages of QAC magazine. A bit of a mystery. He had this look about him, bit of a pout, open chest bearing, Fender Stratocaster, like extremely macho, and this kind of arrogance that comes out before you've even heard him play a note. And that actually is what he's like. He sustained this persona over the years. His guitar playing, for those who don't know, is very, very fast. He's one of a kind of family of guitarists that did this speed style and shredding and so forth. So it's very fast and flashy, and draws on classical music, which had kind of elevated him with his arrogant personality above just mere heavy metal. He was something cleverer. He had listened to Bach and all this stuff and could play it and weave it in. And his pieces of music were called things like Opus 42 or movement in C sharp minor and these sorts of things. So there's an air of mystery, but also a kind of grandeur, I'm better than you sort of thing, which comes over in every single thing that he does. Anyway, so on one hand, that was him. I listened to little bits of his music back in the 80s. Didn't do anything for me. But on our WhatsApp group, which we have, it runs along in parallel to this, he pops up with on a regular basis, thanks to Mr. Gibson, and we all have a bit of a chuckle. And I think it was actually Seb, you mentioned that he had done a blues album. And when Seb says on our group chat, I absolutely promise you this is different and this is brilliant and it's total change from the reality. Seb's actually got his tongue firmly in cheek. So it's a bit of a conceit from me to have expected a slowed down blues album, but I was just hoping that something would be a little bit different from the shredding, from the ultra fast. So it was with eager anticipation I listened to this particular record and discovered for myself just how far he had traveled from his original sound and style. And I think all I'll say is he hadn't traveled as far from it as I had hoped. I'll leave it.
I like that. That was a kind of dot.
It's join a little tease there for everybody.
See you after the
I won't go in depth, but I'm just going to break the ice for everyone, and we'll move it on maybe to some proper thoughts.
Okay, right. Well, thank you, Marcus. That was good. A good little bit of more context as well of who he is, his personality, his kind of place in music. Steve Hackett, do you like music?
I haven't given this as much of a listen as I should have done, but I have done this weekend.
Steve,
I've actually.
Do you like me? Do you like the blues?
No, not a massive fan. I've never heard of the legendary Mr. Malmsteen. Never heard of him or his music. I mean, it's an odd one, isn't it? I mean, I've got no context to put it in. I'm so much out of my depth with this. I'm not a guitar player. I know what the guy is doing is clever. I appreciate that. But it's a terrible, terrible listen. Do you not think? It's I mean, as a non-musician, it's not fair. for me to say, but this style of music, I never liked it. You know, this style of guitar playing. I know it's a clever thing. I know it's very, very hard to do that. I completely appreciate it.
But Steve,
Yeah.
say for example, if we take some of the songs, because there are quite a few. One thing that we haven't mentioned thus far is that there are 8 cover versions on this album and 4 originals. So he covers. I mean, you know, there are some incredible songs here. You know, he does Blue Jean Blues, which is a ZZ Top song, a fantastic. So Foxy Lady by Jimi Hendrix, Demon's Eye, Deep Purple, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, and he improves them. So can you say what, for example, you take While My Guitar Gently Weeps, which is a bit of a dirge, right? It's got that kind of like that piano, and it's and this is obviously,
yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, the guitar on, you know, the George Harrison guitar on that, it's full of emotion. I mean, this thing's just, you know, I don't know. It's clever stuff, isn't it? It's clever stuff, but there's absolutely no emotion in it whatsoever. I didn't know it was it. There's some of them originals then. I presume they're all covers.
The title track, Blue Lightning, the instrumental 1911 Strut,
okay,
Peace Please, which is I mean, incredibly timely, really. Peace Please. It's a sort of instrumental plea for peace in the world. And also, what's the other one? There's another original. Oh, of course, Sun's Up, Tops Down, which is the first single with a video, which is a really good video, which is him driving his Ferraris very slowly around his driveway and Miami.
I mean, by definition, most covers albums are redundant anyway. It's not actually.
But Steve, this isn't a covers album, yeah? So there are a few covers and some originals. So you're wrong. Let's move on, Steve. Let's move on.
The one plus for me was that I'd never heard Demon's Eye. I didn't know it was a Deep Purple song, and I like the song a lot. I've been looking into that, but no, it's not for me. This album, you know, I've not. There's not a great deal I can say about it. I'm just way out my depth with this sort of stuff.
Steve, when you say you liked Demon's Eye, you liked it from this album, so you listened to this.
Yes. Okay, so I'm listening to that and thinking that was a song that I thought I like that. I've not heard that before. You look into it, the Deep Purple version is much better. Simple as that. I don't think any of the songs that I do know of it, the really famous ones, I mean, they've certainly not been improved by this guy, I don't think, and his singing's quite appalling.
Yeah, because of course another thing we neglected to say at the beginning, and that's my mistake, that he plays everything apart from drums. He has played in the past, he's played everything on his albums, but he plays everything and sings everything apart from the drums.
Well, so he's point of order said the drums are programmed by him. It's a pseudonym he puts as the drummer. And
is it?
Yeah, it's not a real drummer at all. It's him with a pseudonym, and they're all programmed. So it is actually all by him.
Okay, I've got here Lawrence Lannerbach plays drums.
Yeah, apparently Lawrence is the Western version of Yngwie. If you had that as a Swedish name and you made it into a Western name, and Lannerbach is his again is his original name rather than his stage name.
That's very cool.
The internet tells me that this
we've actually all learned something here. That's really good. So it's like it's a drum machine. It's with a pseudonym.
It's absolutely, and he's programmed it because he's that clever and better than everybody here.
This is amazing. This is
anyway, I'll just stop there. Forgive me for butting in.
No, that was good. That was a worthy butt. Speaking of worthy butts, Steenie.
Yes, thank you. Very well. So that's quite a compliment. Thank you.
Give us your history. Have you ever seen Yngwie?
I have. I saw him at the Forum, Kentish Town Forum, half full.
What year?
No, balcony was closed, and downstairs was half full or half empty, depending on how you look at it. I think it was like 80 quid for a t-shirt or something ludicrous.
Steenie, what year was this?
This was only a few years ago, 2016, I think, possibly. The entire stage was full of Marshall cabinets and heads, like, enormous. The actual band was in the wings, so the drummer was off to one side, slightly out of view, because obviously the stage was dedicated entirely to amplifiers. The other side's a bassist and keyboard player. Can't remember but they were all off to the side, and it was just Yngwie had the whole stage to himself and his Marshalls prancing around, pirouetting, high kicks. He must have thrown out about 300 plectrums in the course of the first 3 songs. I didn't get a single plectrum. I was down the front. I was like, I'm going to catch a pig. I've got to get one. Did I bollocks? No plectrums for me. It was that was the big disappointment of the night. But I haven't laughed as much. It was a good laugh. I'll say that. But yeah, it was a better laugh than this album, I've got to say.
So
I thought the album, I was mildly traumatized by quite a lot of it actually, because I was expecting to like it more than I did. I was expecting to have a bit of fun and enjoy it. And I actually found myself getting quite cross listening to it. It hasn't happened on this before. And I've listened to that bloody Genesis album on this podcast, and compared to that Genesis album, compared to this album, that Genesis album was a bloody masterpiece. The drum, I'm pleased that you said that Marcus said that this is a drum machine, and as clever as that is, using a pseudonym, it explains a lot. Because I did think it was programmed drummers, and I looked it up on the on Wikipedia. I was like, oh right, so that is a bloke. And I was like, God, he must be shite, that drummer. He's rubbish. Like all he knows how to do is double bass drum fills all the time. It got a terrible feel and 0 swing. It's totally leaden, and now I know why. So that's explained that. There's a very, very obvious thing that goes on in a lot of these songs, and you notice it that on most of these cover songs, he doesn't do all the verses to the songs. So that version of "Smoke on the Water."
He only does one verse and one.
He does
chorus.
one verse straight into the quotes the Blackmore solo a bit, and then just goes off on one again. And then that's virtually the end of the song. It's just a one big fucking solo. And then it's the same with every song. He's sort of like, right, that's quite enough of those lyrics. That's quite enough of the actual song bit. Let's just go off into bloody fairyland and just sweep my way to Valhalla. I don't know. The problem is as well that once you've heard Yngwie do one solo, you have heard every solo that he's ever done, because it is just exactly the same. That bloody thing. It's just like minor arpeggios all the time.
The harmonic minor scale, right?
Yeah, and
That's all he does.
Yeah, it's literally all he does. He tries to be bluesy and he gets instantly bored of it and then just goes off on one. His singing, though, I tell you what, his singing reminds me a little bit of an aged Biff Bifford. You know, that sort of very wide vibrato. That Biff
I was quite impressed with his singing. He sounded a bit like a sort of slightly pissed Bruce Dickinson in some of the songs. He gives it the full vibrato, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think that he probably did that a line at a time and spent flipping hours doing it. I was trying to listen for evidence of auto tuning on it, actually, and I wasn't. I don't think I heard any, but yeah, the amount of time that he gives over to the song, it is just a derisory sort of like, well, this song is just the vehicle for my soloing genius, and and the originals are. I mean, the effort that he's putting to the lyrics basically like tells you how to drive a car in that song, top down. Yeah, to put the key in, turn the key, drop the clutch. He's like, right, thanks, Yngwie.
I was researching this earlier on, and in the album before this one, he's got a song. You're talking about the song "Suns Up, Top Down."
That's the one.
He had a song on the album before called "Top Down, Foot Down."
Yes.
Similar sort of thing, you know.
I think he should have. He's got them in the wrong order there. I think. Oh, maybe, I don't know.
Foot down, top down. Too many.
He's fond of. He's very fond of his Ferraris, and I can see why he'd want to sing about them all the time. But yeah, I was intrigued by the title 1911 Strut. I was wondering if he was envisaging himself as some sort of Edwardian dandy, like sort of.
He used to have those fully cuffed, didn't he? Do you remember?
Yeah, well, that was his look. You know, when Marcus was saying about the old chest out, you know, it was the Baroque, the big sleeves, the velvet, and you know, he basically sort of fancied himself as a bit of like Blackmore meets Beethoven, and it was, you know, it was a cool. I remember when I first saw it, I thought he looks great. I thought I wouldn't mind dressing like that. When I was about 11, I was thinking, imagine if I turned up at school dressed like that. I looked so decent. Everyone would just think I was amazing. But
they don't.
Yeah, and I have got a very quick story. The only Yngwie Malmsteen album I've ever actually paid for was by accident. When I went to buy a Metallica record and they gave me the wrong record in the sleeve, and when I took it back to the shop, they couldn't find the actual record. So they said, take anything you want that's in the shop, and all the else they had was Cameo Video, which is obviously it's a tiny little shop, and they didn't have a massive rock section. So I just took Live in Leningrad and got it home, and I just listened to it about twice, and I was just like, oh, what have I done? I didn't have the heart to go back again to the shop, so I just sort of I've lived with it now for 30 odd years, 35 years maybe.
Very good. Very good. Very good. Simon Ward, thank you very much for joining us. First time guest on our show. We really appreciate you being here. Presumably, you've never heard real proper man's music like this before. What were your first impressions?
Well, it's interesting actually that I was expecting the Build non-metalheads not to enjoy it. I'm surprised that one of the Build metalheads didn't. So I'm here to redress the balance. I don't think there are words. You were right. I didn't know Yngwie Malmsteen really at all. I'd seen him, I think, on MTV in the pub or something, and decided I didn't like him when I was 16 or 17. But other than that, I don't really know anything about him. But I did do some research. I've listened to the album twice all the way through, and I expect a fucking medal for that. Because this is one of the biggest steaming piles of turd I've ever heard committed to record. It's unforgivably bad. So it sounds, first of all, the production is glorious, right? I'm going to assume, so I did do quite a lot of research about Yngwie to find out what we were dealing with here. So I'm aware of his reputation for being a complete egomaniac dick. So I listened to, maybe not complete, but so I was listening to this album, and the first thing I noticed was it sounds like it's recorded at the bottom of a well. And when I was doing the research on this, I noticed that there was a quote from him around the time this album came out, where he was keen to remind everybody that he hadn't done drink or drugs for 20 years. And I wonder whether the reason that he was so keen to remind everybody of that around the time of this recording of this album was either A, because people were questioning whether he must have been on drugs to have made a record that badly produced. I think he produced it himself. I think it's not just the playing. I think he does the production as well. Or whether he had a slide back into drink and drugs, and that was what had resulted in this record, because it is terrible. It's absolutely terrible throughout. I read a review of Susie and the Banshees Through the Looking Glass.
Here we go.
Came out in Melody Maker in 1987. And the reviewer said, I often think with a covers album, and I'm going to stick up for Steve here. I think this is a covers album. And the review of Through the Looking Glass said, the thing with the covers album is to imagine what it would be like to listen to a playlist of the originals. And would that be better than listening to this record? Now, on Through the Looking Glass, you can argue either way, because actually the Banshees do some really interesting stuff with some of those tunes. But I mean, on a song-by-song level, as Steenie pointed out, every single version of a song on here is worse than the original by some distance, right? The guitar soloing, I tried to sum up how the guitar soloing felt to me. And remember, I'm not a metaler, so I think he's a terrible guitar player. For the reasons that Steve pointed out earlier, there's no emotion in this playing at all. And it's almost like he's trying to invite comparisons with better guitar players than him. So, like, he does 2 Jimi Hendrix songs, and they couldn't be more different as musicians. Jimi Hendrix obviously is a genius, and Yngwie Malmsteen's a car mechanic. His soloing, I tried to describe what his soloing sounded like to me, and I came up with a couple of things. It's like a middle-aged, impotent man trying desperately to stroke himself to orgasm. It's like a coked up insurance underwriter telling you about the time he was invited to Theo Paphitis' house. It's like a Jack Russell absent-mindedly pissing on a dead plant. It's as though it's total disregard for the listener. absolute and total disregard for the listener, of no musical merit whatsoever. But you know, so he's invited a comparison with Jimi Hendrix. Then he does While My Guitar Gently Weeps, and as you will all know, Prince's solo to While My Guitar Gently Weeps at the 2004 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction is the greatest guitar solo of all time.
Overrated.
Yngwie Malmsteen has invited comparison with the guy who did Kiss and Sign of the Times and Raspberry Beret and lost the guitar fight against him. I mean, it's quite staggering how badly he's done. And his vocals, I mean, my God alive. The only good bit of vocals on the whole record is at the beginning of Suns Up, Top Down. He does a "come on," which sounds a bit like Ian Astbury, which is quite good. Apart from that, his singing is utterly diabolical. There isn't a musical bone in his body.
Simon,
Yeah.
I'm just going to leave you. I'm going to leave you on quite good. I'm just writing down quite good, and then we're going to go to Steve.
My final thought for this bit. Well, very quickly, final thoughts. Purple Haze is the standout worst track on the album, which is quite an achievement. So it's a busy field. The beginning of 1911 Strut. Fucking hell, he's just finished a massive solo and he starts the next fucking song with another solo. It's like, is it never going to end? Is he never going to stop? But yeah, I enjoyed it a lot, as you can tell.
Well, no, he doesn't stop. That's his career. I mean, literally, that is his career. He doesn't fucking stop.
I saw an interview with him where he said somebody told him that less is more, and he said no, more is more. And I expect he thinks that's funny.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about his we'll talk about his guitar lessons, his maestro guitar.
Oh, I saw those. Those are glorious.
But there's one where he's teaching a kind of Chinese looking guy. It's the funniest thing. Steve Gibson. Sorry to come to you last. I'll come to you last only because I know Steve Gibson is kind of almost kind of, I would say, the closest thing to an expert on Yngwie that I know of. Do you follow him on Instagram? I know you've seen him.
I saw Yngwie Malmsteen on the Rising Force tour back in the day at his height.
What year was that?
Oh, when was it? 85, 86, something like that, wasn't it?
Well, when he was playing with a real singer.
Jolene Turner. It was Jolene Turner.
Jolene Turner.
Yeah. So, and ever since that day, I've been completely fascinated by him. Not his music, but him as a person. Because how can you have Jolene Turner, and because he was when he was in the band Alcatraz with Graham Bonnet. Graham Bonnet was interviewed recently and said, "Well, we'd go out and sing, and Yngwie just kept standing in front of me in the verse, play. Wouldn't get out of the way. Everywhere I moved, he moved in front of me. And then when I saw with Jolene Turner, and of course this is like big, the stage was all there, and it was a bit like Steenie said, everyone off to the side, and you've got Jolene Turner there, who's just finished his Rainbow, massive hits, the rest of it, and a lot of people were kind of excited to see Jolene Turner, but Yngwie stands in front of him, spotlights on Yngwie all the time, as you know. And his social media is at the moment, right? Yngwie's social media he's doing this thing where I think yesterday there was a young Chinese or Japanese girl, and she was stunned, obviously a model, and she had Yngwie in her hair, like shaved into her head, and it's sort of like, and it's got hashtag I've got the best fans. Then the next day it's like these two really young, cool, model-looking people, with Yngwie shirts on. So and you're thinking you've obviously hired these people to do it. And I love the footage of him getting out of limos with security there, and there's literally no one there sort of trying to get anywhere near him. Just a normal street somewhere. There was that young lad, I love it, it's been taken down. There's a young lad on YouTube, that was a couple of years ago now, I did share it with the group, and he's about 15, 16, and he did a massive kind of rant about Yngwie. He said, look, I love Yngwie. I just studied him as if you're a young guitarist at sort of 12, 13, you're going to love him, aren't you? But he said, I've ordered this merch and it's all misspelt and I can't get my money back. And it's just really like, and then Yngwie came down like a ton of bricks on him with the lawyers and shut his channel down. This lad's only about 16, And Yngwie's, he has a t-shirt that on the front it says who, and on the back it says Yngwie fucking Malmsteen. That's who.
I actually own that t-shirt.
Have you got
My respect for him has gone up slightly as a result of that, and I might get one of those.
I've been a keen follower of him, and I even when he does these kind because his career, it doesn't. I don't understand where he gets the Ferrari stuff from. Because it doesn't seem to be. The albums don't sell massively. He does a very good impression of sellout gigs, but they're not. He plays very small places. He does a lot of stuff where it's just him and a backing track, and it's questions and answers. And if you're watching him on YouTube, it's like him, like say in the Brook, you know, with a massive wall of marshals behind him, playing along to a backing track, getting a question, and then not answering the like in true politician style, not answering the question, just telling the bloke who asked the question how great Yngwie Malmsteen is, then doing another really loud, fast solo for 2 hours. So I've on a psychological level, I find him completely fascinating, and therefore I'm going to say the other week I can't remember what album it was, but Ross made the point of how you can't possibly criticize somebody, can you, for doing what they do. And when this album came out, me and Seb talked about it at the time when it came out, and we were laughing. And I thought, and he's done, and like him doing While My Guitar Gently Weeps is the sort of thing you'd say, oh, has he? Yeah, good one. That's a joke. Oh, what? Fuck, he actually has. Fucking hell. And then, but why wouldn't he? And he wouldn't think it's funny. He would genuinely think, well, yeah, I could do better than that. It's that bloke's playing 2 notes. More is more. You know, that's Malmsteen. So, what did I expect from this? I expected what I got, and the drumming. In fact, the drummer who was with him pre this, he's a guy. He's also got a bit of an ego on him. But you talk to listen to any of the musicians who've been in the band at any point, and they'll say, well, on that guy's tour, and Malmsteen wasn't particularly big at the time, but they all had their individual limos. And they're all thinking, well, this isn't really sustainable, is it, globally, as we're going around? So the whole thing's a bit of a mystery to me. But yeah, what did I expect from this album? Exactly what, you know, exactly what it is. And can I criticize him for doing that? Not really. We'll go when we go around again and talk about the actual music. I've got some thoughts on that, obviously, and the standard of the covers. But I can't really say that I expected anything more or less than what I got from hearing the rest of this album. You know, in fact, I expected at least to actually do the songs rather than 2 minutes Smoke the Water followed by him soloing. And I actually compared some of the songs lengthwise to the originals. There's a good like 2.5 minutes of just soloing added onto, and like half the actual song, but an extra 2.5 minutes onto the original track of just soloing. You know, so perhaps even by Malmsteen standards, it's it's incredible. I'll leave it at that for the minute. It's incredible.
Very good, very good. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think what potentially this album had the potential to do was to almost humanize him. Like he's going to do a blues album, because he was always very dismissive about the blues. He said, I never listen to Jimi Hendrix. I never listen to Richie Blackmore. I only listen to Paganini and Bach. That's all I do. I only care about that, calling his songs Toccata and fugues and all this sort of shit. And you listen to this and think, okay, well, what's he going to do when he has to kind of descend from his golden cloud of genius into the real world of real songs and real bands in interpretation, in inverted commas. What was he going to do? And that's what's so comical about this whole thing. Is this? I suppose as a guitar player, Steenie, I mean, you sort of think, well, I'm a guitar player, Steenie, you're a guitar player, Simon, you're a guitar player as well. We're all musicians. I know Steve Hackett. I think you're the only person who's not a musician here, I suppose. So in a way, your view is purer. But what I found apart from the maximalism of this music, which is comical, as we're saying, but it is how disappointing what he does. Sometimes he hits a note on a solo. He is at a point he hits a note. You think, oh, you could do a lot with that note. You could go somewhere with that. But he just doesn't. He goes. His instincts, his musical instincts, even when he hits a nice vibrato in a fifth, and think, oh, this is going to be good. Anyone else, even I'm shit at this sort of thing, could just do something rhythmic or just something, or a little bit of feedback, or Jeff Beck could literally just destroy you in 2 bars. But Yngwie, it's so, and this is what makes me sad, really. Is that he's obviously very good. You watch this, he's just got all this stuff, you know, these scout necks and stuff. He's clearly crazy talented. And at 60, he's over 65 years old, and he's crazy. This is crazy stuff. But I think he's mad. I think he's genuinely mad. It's like he can't. All he can do is apply this. Yeah. So it's everything. You can see he stops and thinks, right, if he's got like what, a second or half a second to think, right, what am I going to do now? And that's his best take, and that's his compilation of his best takes. Just fucking blah, blah, blah. And that's before we get, and that's despite the structures and the singing and the awful drumming. Sometimes, and the other thing is, sometimes he plays rhythm guitar every now and again, and he's fucking out of time. He's out of time with a fucking click because he just can't be asked to play in time. Do you know what I mean? He just can't be asked. Oh fuck, whatever, and doesn't edit it. Yeah, fine. Da da da. So God, yeah.
It's really interesting you say that because, as I say, as a non-guitarist, I'm sat listening to this and thinking, is this really clever? Is it, you know, because obviously it's hard to do.
It's hard to do, but he does it, as someone else said earlier on. If you go and see him live, and of course we've all, well, a lot of us have watched YouTube of him live, and he does everything he's going to do all night. He does in the first 90 seconds of a gig. He does nothing else beyond that first 90 seconds for the next however long. And that's just really just reading everything wrong. I just don't know who likes this. Who actually likes this? Because there are lots of people. There are lots of guitar players who can do this, but do it in interesting, imaginative ways and kind of put an extra layer to it. And I suppose with Malmsteen, you're getting the show, right? You're getting the cartoon. You're getting the caricature. You're getting the humor. You're getting the nonsense. You're getting the kind of his dyed hair and his massive sideburns and unleash the fucking fury, all that sort of stuff. You're getting the comedy, right? I suppose you're getting the kind of spinal tapism. I suppose he must ride that a bit, right? Anyway, let's go around again. Marcus, what are your favourite?
Yeah, well, a few things to add,
the
really. And one was harking back to one of our earlier episodes, which was, I mean, very different context, but it was when we looked at the Nick Cave, listened to the Nick Cave album. Steve Gibson said he listened to it in a different way, which is as a joke, as a comedy album, and you started to get something from it. And actually, the humour with this one is how I started to get some enjoyment, because it's so ridiculous and so over the top and maximalist, as you say. That was, I did get a degree of pleasure at that point, because it sort of went through the barrier of grimness for me and out the other end, and then there was something which was funny with it. I'm interesting. I looked up some of the reviews that are out there. There aren't many reviews. It hasn't really been covered very well. But Amazon, for people buying the CD, people absolutely love this guy, like absolutely love it, and they're all like saying how amazing he is and all the rest of it. So it clicks with a certain group of people who are sufficient to keep him in Ferraris somehow or other. But interestingly, the places that it was reviewed, something like the famous publication called Tuinola magazine. Their comment was, "It's rather tasteless on the whole."
Marcus, that's a Finnish magazine, and it charted in Finland. It got to, I've got this.
Oh, right.
It got to number 30. It got to number 38 in Finland.
Well, how about that? There's another magazine website called melodicrock.com, and their opener was, "It's just bloody awful." So he didn't really win it over with the critics on this one. There's probably a classic rock review for it somewhere. Well, what is there to say about the music? We've kind of been around it already, I think, with the group. I think the biggest sort of insult to me / funny was When My Guitar Gently Weeps. That's the most sort of different and ruinous compared to the original, but only by a small margin, and it's a kind of personal thing. Because I suppose if the other songs have come from a hard rock genre, he's in that, so there's a tiny bit of forgiveness I'll give to him. I thought with Smoke on the Water, he at least copied Blackmore's opening bits on the solo, which is wonderful and famous and properly musical, and then he goes off into these, and like you said, Seb, the musical, the bits of his solo are so many of the same, exactly the same. There's this, I think you call it harmonic minor, where it goes down through probably 2 runs of the 2 octaves or something, and it's just like a trick that he does again and again and again in whatever key the song's in. So it's not a kind of creation around the music, it's just a little stunt. It's a bit of trickery or a.
Can I come in on that, Mark? Because you're absolutely right. That's exactly it. But the other thing is, when it goes into it, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, right? It's quite. I'm a guitar teacher, and it's quite a fun song to teach because the verses are in are in A minor, and the choruses are in A major.
Right.
But he doesn't he doesn't solo over the choruses because he can't solo in a major key. It just keeps it cold, just keeps it to the chords, and then it drops to the verse, and off it goes again. Do you know what I mean?
It's just amazing. It's back to what you said, Steve Hackett, about this guy actually is not a good musician. He's a technician, and he's got a particular type of technique off pat, but in terms of emotional expression, he hasn't got it. No. So yeah, I think that's probably what I'm going to say on this one. I found it amusing, and after a couple of listens, but I just really concur with everybody else. I'm afraid to say, yeah. I'll hand over to the next person before I cough.
Steenie, you're next. I can't help but ask, why did you go and see him live? Can you tell us your motivation?
Oh, because I'd never seen him live, and
yeah, but it must have cost you like 30 quid.
Curiosity got the better of me. Oh, it probably cost me more. It probably cost me about 35 quid, I think. I went with a load of other guitar players, and we all went and had a big old piss up, and then went to the gig, and had a good old laugh. It was a good day out.
What was the kind of consensus? Did you go with any other kind of shredders? Did you go with anybody who kind of appreciated, who played that sort of stuff? Like, I want to see this.
There was a friend of a friend there who's a guy who is a real shredder, who went to like Guildford ACM and works in a guitar shop, or has worked in a guitar shop, and I think he's more enthralled to that kind of thing than the rest of us were. I mean, the thing is that there was a small essence of fandom in all of us, because I do like his very first album, the Rising Force record with Black Star on it, and I do like that. That's because that was new when he did that originally. That was new. That whole thing was relatively new. People like obviously Blackmore had sort of gone somewhere with the classical thing a little bit, touched on it, but bringing it into the metal world. But when Yngwie first did it, it was kind of not really that well, widespread, that kind of shredding style. Randy Rhoads had kind of done it as well, but he took it to the sort of nth degree. And sort of Black Star, I think, has got a really good melody, but it's the first song on his first album. So he said everything that he was ever going to need to say, like you say, with the first song on his first album.
I agree. It's a really lovely song. Yeah.
I still really like that song. So when he played it, I was like, well, that's paid for itself. But by the time he gets to album 21, is it this one? And he's scraping the blues barrel. Yeah, it's very thin gruel indeed, isn't it? I think the thing with his playing, as well as it being, as Marcus says, a series of tricks, is that the QAC, because it's such a barrage, it just completely washes over you. There's nothing in it that kind of catches your ear. In fact, the bits that you remember more are the vocals and the lumpy bass playing and the lumpy drum machine. That all stands out, but the actual guitar solos, I couldn't tell you really. There's no memorable bits where I go, that was a really catchy bit, because it is just almost like white noise. And speaking of which, his keyboard playing on it is so shite and his choice of sounds and everything for the keyboard, I actually thought there was some sort of like microphonic feedback going on for a lot of these songs in the background, because he's chosen these weird, like, his pitching and stuff, and he sustains notes for like because he's not a keyboard player, he doesn't play like the keyboard parts. He just does a sequence of like squealy drones.
He doesn't play chords either, and it's notes, and it's all in the left channel.
And it was starting to mess with my bloody ears. It was horrible. I actually thought he'd set his mic. He'd somehow got like loads of bleed going and got some microphonic feedback from something, and I realized, oh, it's the keyboard. But it's so badly done. I tell you what, this album has got something in common with that Genesis album that we listened to, and this track 1 on this album and track 1 on that Genesis album both had unusually long fade outs. The fade out on track 1 on this starts a good minute before it actually finishes. It's like tapering off.
I've got that written down as well, and it's as if he was like, he just can't. Oh, this is a good bit. I've got to let this fade out go. They'll like this bit. Oh, this bit here is good.
Yeah.
No one to tell him not to do it.
And I hark back to when I was a kid, and when the solo of Night Train by Guns N' Roses fades out, and in a similar sort of way. But I remember like turning that up and having my headphones on, turning it right up to hear the last few notes, because that was a genuinely thrilling guitar solo played by someone who really meant it. And with Yngwie, I'm just thinking, oh, fucking just turn it right down now. Stop it. Just stop the pain. Whereas like a good fade, you're like, oh, I really want to hear where this is still going. Or like Back in Black when that fades, you're like, oh, I want to hear where he was going still. But yeah, you don't get that with Yngwie at all. Yeah, the song choices as well are like, it's all like the most obvious pub rock songs, apart from Demon's Eye, which is an unusual choice, and a great song, but that version isn't great. It doesn't have the swing. It doesn't have Ian Pace swinging behind it, and yeah, it's a sad state of affairs, this record, to be honest. But I'm trying to think if there's any other major observations I've got.
Steve, have a think about it. We'll come back to you in a minute. Steve Hackett. Yeah. Is this music to you, Steve Hackett?
No, not in the slightest, Seb. It's as I say, it means absolutely nothing to me.
What do you hear when you hear this? What do you think? What do you hear when you're? What do you make of it when you listen to it and you're thinking, you have to listen to it and you're thinking?
My assumption, again, that's why it's so interesting hearing you lot talk about it, who can actually play. My assumption is that, this guy's obviously incredible at what he does. He's an incredible artist, blah, blah, blah. I just don't get it. It's just not my thing. But quite obviously you do get it, and it isn't your thing either, Has he ever been in a band, this guy?
Yeah,
he was kicked out of bands. Yeah, he had a fight. He was kicked out of Alcatraz for fighting on stage with Graham Bonnet, wasn't he? He's always kicked out because that's why he started his own band with a different singer, so he kept falling out with and firing. Yeah, his ego just kind of ruined everything for him, which is why he does everything himself.
And has he ever made any, sort of classic albums or anything?
Steenie said the first album, Black Star, was a really good song. It was, the early stuff is quite good because he was still having to kind of be judged by the world, I suppose.
Well, right, Rising Force with the Jolene Turner album's really good. That was his biggest that was his high point. He still starts with Rising Force, I noticed, all these years later. He still starts his set.
Still plays Deja Vu live as well, which is quite a decent enough song, isn't it? I quite like that.
Sorry. Yeah, carry on, Steve.
What size venues is he playing now then? He's still making money, obviously.
Church halls.
Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting that as Steve said earlier on, he plays a lot of the time. He doesn't even go out with the band. He just plays. He has it all on the backing track, and he's on a stage just playing guitar and throwing picks out. So and the footage you see on YouTube is just a little crowd down the front. So I don't think it's a. I mean, I don't know how he gets all the. I presume the Marshall Bock cabs, they're not real, are they? Steve, are they actually plugged in? Or?
More of them were plugged in than you'd normally see at a rock concert. Surprisingly, red lights were on, and he was adjusting volume. He definitely was using
adjusting volume.
He
really going like this.
He was fiddling with the knobs. So some of them were switched on, whether they're dummy lamp LEDs or whatever. I think he does use Marshalls. I don't think he's a convert. Or at this gig, I don't think he was using kind of modeling or anything like that. I think it was definitely Marshall power.
Simon, can we come back to you? Can you what were your thoughts? Is there anything redeemable at all about this?
I mean, so leaving aside, there's lots of things that I don't understand. I mean, I'm a little bit like Steve Hackett. I'm coming at this from a slightly strange position because I don't understand why anybody would choose to listen to that sort of music in the first place. So, like, whether it's a good record or a bad record, it isn't music. Like you asked Steve, is it music? It's not. So, and I did try and be somewhat objective about it. I mean, it was too easy to hate it to be much objective, but so I went and did some research on Yngwie Malmsteen, and I listened to some of his earlier stuff, and I think that's also terrible. But it's clear to me that that this is bad even by his standards. I can see why, even if you liked that kind of nonsense, you would listen to this record and go, "No, mate, no, don't. Like, somebody, there needs to be an intervention. Somebody needs to say to him, look, the reason you've got to do it on your own, there's a reason for that." So, like, I mean, so yeah, it's kind of difficult for me, a bit like Steve, to make a judgment of this record. And I'm afraid I can't talk to you about the fade outs because I physically couldn't sit through the solos. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't get to the end of them. One time I was listening, so I hadn't heard Blue Jean Blues. I didn't know the original. I quite like ZZ Top. I like a couple of tracks off of the earlier sort of sludge rock stuff, and obviously I like the Eliminator stuff, the singles off Eliminator, because they're great. And I went and listened to Blue Jean Blues, and it struck me how much more music there is involved in ZZ Top's rendition of that song, which is some, compared to the amount of music that's involved. I think you said this, Steenie. There's no music in Yngwie Malmsteen at all. None of it is music. It's just, and I don't know if I agree that he is a very clever or very talented man. All he's done is practice a lot. And one of the things I was suspicious of about metalers when I was young was it's not very rock and roll to spend that much time in your bedroom. Like, you should be out there doing stuff, like taking drugs and shagging girls and stuff. Like, you shouldn't be at home practicing that hard. So, yeah, I mean, the whole thing is a complete fucking mystery to me. But yeah, Purple Haze, his vocals on Purple Haze are just staggeringly bad. Absolutely terrible. And what the other thing I don't quite understand, and I would like somebody at some point to explain heavy metal humor to me, because that was one of the things. I had heavy metal friends, because when we were all kids, I think we're all about the same age, you had to I was a sort of goth punk, whatever, and we had to hang out with the metalers because there was 10 of us collectively against a bunch of lads in Sergio Tacchini tops trying to beat us up. So, like, with safety in numbers, and we had one pub that we were allowed to use, and we'd use different ends of it, right? And there was always this thing, but metalers were always trying to explain to me about the sense of humor in metal. And there's nothing that I find funny about this record. It just makes me want to hurt people. And like,
Simon, what can you give us some examples of what the metal humor was?
Well, I don't know. I can't see anything that's funny. But they were always saying, like you all have said, we had a good laugh. We went to see Yngwie Malmsteen, we had a good laugh. What is there to laugh about when you're having to listen to that? I don't understand. I'm not being funny. I genuinely don't understand what's funny about heavy metal. What's fun or funny about it?
I suppose it's a very good point, actually, because if we're honest, we go to quite a lot of metal gigs, and there's
ironically
an element of irony, in that.
What's fun about that?
Can I just say that when we saw Voivod at the Joiners, Steve Hackett was there, and you said yourself, Steve, that what doesn't come across on the records, because I think that was one of your first metal gigs. You said what doesn't come across is the humor of metal, but it came across when you saw Voivod and the Walk Band live.
They were brilliant.
So maybe you can explain to Simon a bit about.
Good go.
Also, Raven.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Nothing. I just had to say Raven because they were fucking brilliant when we saw them.
Raven.
They were very funny.
Okay.
Steve, the floor's all yours, mate. What is funny about Voivod? In a funny, good, not laughing with, not laughing at.
No. Just never. Steve said it was actually the very first sort of metal gig I've ever seen, and I really, really enjoyed it. I loved the energy coming off the audience. I loved the band. They weren't taking it seriously at all, I didn't think. But were they funny? No, I thought they were fantastic. Thought they were absolutely fantastic. But it's that thing. Do you take sense so seriously? This guy obviously does. Big time.
Well, does he? So, Steve, when you saw it, was there? I think the thing we're talking about, there's a wink. There's a knowingness that.
Yes, he does take himself seriously. When I saw him, he was taking himself very, very seriously.
I think he does take himself seriously. I think he's learned. I think he's learned a few coping mechanisms to make sure that his ego isn't completely destroyed every time he goes out by people just laughing at openly at his concerts. But I don't think he has a massive sense of humor. He always says, he's always saying about what a great sense of humor he has in interviews, isn't he? He's always saying what a big Monty Python fan he is. And I always think that a lot of people who say that are people who've got no sense of humor. That's like their defense.
So true.
I can quote every Monty Python line. Well, good for you, mate. We do it on your own. You know.
Well, Yngwie, don't forget Yngwie's. He had a podcast for a bit where he had, Steve Vai and stuff like that. But you listen to it, it was just basically he had some good people on, but all you heard was Yngwie's voice talking about Yngwie. I thought Steve Vai was in the room as well, or someone else,
his if you look on this, his because I listen to this on Spotify just on my phone on headphones, and I was reading his profile description. If you look at the artist description, and it's written by him, it's well worth a look. I can't do it, but it goes on. Has words like staggering genius in it.
You said like that he's learned all of the punchlines for all of the lines from Monty Python, and I think that is the essence of the man. Is there's no like you said, there's no spirit in him at all. He's just learnt it all. He's like Will Hunting, he's read it all in a book, but none of it has got any humanity about it at all, or any art about it. It's got less art than the Manic Street Preachers, and that's quite an achievement.
I agree. I think as this incredible guitar player, he doesn't apart from playing fast, he does nothing incredible at all other than just never stopping.
Yeah, it's stamina and speed and stamina. I mean, if it was athletics, I'm sure he'd be winning medals. But
So
yeah, I think we can start to think about scores.
Sorry.
Oh, we can. sorry, Steve.
No, carry on.
No, I was going to start talking about scores, but go.
Well, I've not had my second go yet.
Oh, I do apologise.
Don't worry about it. Carry on with the scores.
No. Carry on. I've lost count. Carry on. Sorry, I do apologise. That wasn't on purpose.
No. Just carry on with the scores.
No, because you're the expert. I genuinely want to hear what you're saying. Go.
Come on, bring it on.
Come on.
Well, it's not much. It's all pretty much been covered, to be honest with you. But talking about the music, then the playing is exactly what I expect Malmsteen to do. The choice of covers are uninspired. They're played awfully. Doesn't even play all of them. But it's all completely what I expected. When this came out, I flicked through it, and I listened to it all through, which was quite an achievement. I'm with Simon on that one. And when Sun's Out, Roof's Down, Sun's Out, whatever came on, there's a very famous South African novel called Familiarity's Kingdom of the Lost. And I got that feeling when Sun's Out, Roof's Down came on, because I'd heard it before and I had some sort of, I was familiar with it. So I felt a bit more comfortable than all the other shit on there. So that's about it, really. I can't really say much more about Yngwie, but except for that's exactly what I expected. And sum up and scores, I think.
Okay, right. Marcus, sum up and score.
I got some humour out of the record that I wasn't expecting, so that's it, saving grace. So I'm going to give it out of 100, 10 points.
Simon, I probably neglected to tell you. I'm sure Steve told you we're marking things out of 100s when he's quite.
No, and
but I'm not coming to you. I'm just explaining
okay,
to you.
Good. I'll work on it.
You can have a think about it. You can use your fingers and your toes. Steve Hackett. So Marcus, we've got 10. Steve Hackett, give us a summing up and your marks up.
5 out of 100, and that's just for introducing me to Demon's Eye. Otherwise, it's a 5.
Steamy.
I'm gonna go midway between and say 8, an 8. It's not even a 10. It's not 10%. And he plays the riff of Smoke on the Water out of time as well. I did notice. It's nothing's in time in that intro. And that is the ultimate guitar shop song. If there's one song you should be able to play properly, it's that.
Yeah, it's shocking. Simon.
I'm trying to find. Okay, the come on that reminded me of Ian Astbury warrants a point, so I'll give it 1.
What one as in 1 out of 100?
As in 1 out of 100. I mean, I had to search deep to find something to give it that. So,
Cool. I'm glad you found something. Steve Gibson.
Can only really put this. He's an enigma, and I can only put this. I can't level this against any other music because that's just not fair. He needs help. I can only level this against other Malmsteen that I've heard, and there's a lot of other Malmsteen albums that I flicked through, and I'd rather listen to this than them. And I didn't expect anything else really, so it's 20 from me.
Steve, are there worse Malmsteen albums than this?
Oh God, in my opinion, yeah.
Oh, you better just message me with some, will you? I'd love to hear a worse record than that.
20. I'm astounded by that. I give it. I'm going to give it 10 because I quite liked that. Whatever it was, 18. What was it called? The shuffle thing. What was it called?
1911.
The 1911 shuffle. I thought that was quite. I thought that was sounded like it was a fast, metally instrumental, and it was quite a nice riff, and it worked on its own terms. Quite short. Went
only 2.5 minutes. That's the main good thing about it.
Exactly. No singing. It wasn't awful. It was a sort of 1 out of 10 sort of piece of music. Everything else was nothing. So yeah, I'm going to give it 10. So that gives us a total of 54, which divided by 6 gives us 9. This is our lowest. This is unsurprisingly, really. This has come out lowest of all. Yeah. Our lowest before this was another Marcus choice, Burning the Witches, which had 15.5. So
I'm feeling quite proud actually to have really got into the spirit of the Questionable Album Club by choosing the 2 lowest scoring albums in our history.
Marcus, the 4th lowest album is also yours, the Dan Reed Network. So you are literally.
Marcus, I think there's you know how when a guest is on for the 3rd time they qualify to choose one. If you're in the bottom 4, you're banned from choosing for 2.
Yeah.
I think it works the other way as well. As I make those rules up, I've just decided that. So
yeah, Steve is the he's in charge of that sort of thing. So wow, okay, thanks everybody. Right, Steenie, to talk about the next album. So Steenie, because you've been a guest so many times, you now earned the right to choose your own album. So can you tell us what album you've chosen and why?
So the album I've chosen is Chris Cornell's 2008, I think, or 2009 album Scream, produced by Timbaland, features barely any guitar. It's it's the album where he basically tried to enter a market that no one thought he should, and I don't know. I'm yet to find out, having only ever seen a clip of the video, and been astounded by it, genuinely astounded. That I don't know whether anyone thought it was an advisable move for him to do, but it's Chris Cornell's attempt to reinvent himself as a pop star as opposed to a howling rock singer.
Did he commit suicide straight after that?
No, that was another 10 years.
Oh,
after that, yeah, it wasn't. This isn't one of it's not a tragic album in terms of his life story. I'm yet to find out, and we will find out whether it's a tragic album in terms of his musical story. But yeah, I've never listened to it. I've, like I say, I've seen clips of the video, and at the time heard people saying, "What the hell's going on?"
So is it a pop album then?
It's essentially a pop record, but I think if you believe Timbaland, it's a great forgotten psychedelic masterpiece. If you believe on a par with, and this is quoting interviews at the time and subsequent, on a par with Dark Side of the Moon. Chris Cornell said that it was his A Night at the Opera. So
exciting.
There's some lofty aspirations, but from what I've been given to understand, not met by the actual product. But we shall find out.
We will see. Is anyone familiar with this? Simon, are you a Chris Cornell Soundgarden man?
No, Soundgarden sounded too squealy voiced for my liking.
Hackett, Steve Hackett, did you Soundgarden, Chris Cornell?
I'm a recent Soundgarden convert, actually, very recently. Just heard a couple of songs by accident, and so I've just started looking into them coincidentally recently. I quite like them.
Marcus, Soundgarden?
No, but I did like his other band he did with Radio Machine. I can't remember what they're called now.
Audio Slave.
Audio Slave, yeah. I thought they were really good. But
Jesus, awful. Steve, we saw
I love the first Soundgarden album. I absolutely loved it. And I went to buy it on an HMV, and I said to the guy, I said, "Have you got the new Soundgarden album? I love the single Hands All Over." And he said, "Nah, sorry, mate, never heard of it." And I said to him, "I didn't ask you whether you heard of it. I asked you whether HMV had it in stock." So that's my main memory of buying the first Soundgarden album, which I love. I still love Hands All Over to this day. Actually, I think it's a fantastic song and well before its time. I'm sure, well before Greta was born. Put it that way. Yeah.
Well, I think that's it. Thanks. Thank you, Steve, for that choice. Very good choice. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Simon, for joining us for the first time. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Steve Hackett, again. Thanks, Marcus. Thank you, Steve. That's it. And we'll see you on the next one.